The woman stood at the bakery counter, her hands clenched so tightly they'd turned pale. She spoke softly, almost a whisper. "I'm sorry. I need to cancel the birthday cake for Saturday, the one with the blue buttercream and the slide." Behind the counter, the clerk froze. She remembered that order clearly. A water park-themed cake with a little chocolate slide for a girl named Lily. It was placed 3 weeks ago, half paid up front. "It was for your daughter's birthday, wasn't it?" "Yes," the woman replied, her voice cracking. "She doesn't know I just lost half my income this week." Her name was Meredith, 36 years old, a single mom to a 7-year-old girl. She worked the night shift at an animal care center, a job she loved, but also the place where she'd just gotten the news. Starting next week, her hours would be cut by nearly half due to budget cuts. No negotiation, no warning. Meredith didn't cry at work. She didn't cry on the way home. But when she opened her wallet, counted every last coin, then glanced at the rent bill on the table, she went still. Lily's birthday was exactly 17 days away. Lily was a wildly imaginative kid who rarely asked for anything. But for months, she'd been saying, "If I got to have my birthday at that little water park nearby, I think I'd be happy for a whole year." Meredith had nodded. She'd promised. That's why she'd been eating cold sandwiches all week instead of ordering takeout. She didn't want her daughter to have to choose between dreams and reality, but now she was the one being forced to make that choice. That night, in the small 2-bedroom apartment they rented in a quiet suburb, Meredith waited for Lily to fall asleep. Then she pulled out the metal savings box and counted again. Inside, $112. Not enough for the water park rental, decorations, birthday cake, and snacks for the kids. Rent was due Monday, $750. She had $640 saved up. If she used Lily's savings, she could make the full payment. If she didn't, they could lose their home. She remembered the moment Lily smiled and held up her sketchbook, pointing to a messy drawing of a birthday party, balloons, a water slide, and a heart-shaped cake in the middle. "I don't need anything big, Mom. Just getting to play at the park with my friends, have some cake, and have you home that day. That's all I want." Meredith had thought she could make it work, until the shift cuts, until reality smacked her in the face with a choice that felt anything but humane: rent or her daughter's birthday. The next morning, light rain fell. Meredith pulled on her old coat with the worn shoulders and walked into the small bakery down the street. The smell of butter and vanilla made her heart sink. She remembered how carefully she'd picked out that cake, how she'd smiled when the baker said, "Your daughter is going to love this." Now here she was, asking to cancel. "We already started the decorations," the clerk said, hesitating. "I know, and I'm really sorry. I just can't keep the order anymore." She lowered her head, trying to hide the tears welling up at the corners of her eyes. "It's okay. I'm not asking for the deposit back." As she spoke, she pulled a $5 bill from her pocket to pay for Lily's breakfast sandwich. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to lay the bill on the counter instead of handing it over. She left the shop, stepping quickly into the rain. No umbrella, no words. Just a child who still didn't know her dream birthday had just been erased, and a mother struggling to hold on to her dignity in a world that never stops demanding more. Meredith had no idea that, in a far corner of the bakery, someone had witnessed the whole thing. Someone who had never been part of her life. But in that moment, with that look in his eyes, everything was about to change. He was sitting in the very back corner of the bakery, where the light was dimmer and it was easy to blend into the faded brick walls. A gray-brown canvas jacket draped over the chair beside him, and his second espresso sat cold, untouched. Travis hadn't come here looking for anything except a quiet morning before making the 2-hour drive out to the industrial site. But what he got was something unexpected and unforgettable. The woman's voice had reached him just as he was skimming an email about a new solar project in the next state over. Everything about her life seemed completely disconnected from his, until she mentioned the birthday cake, and the child who didn't yet know her dream party was about to disappear. Travis froze, looking up toward the counter. He couldn't see her face clearly, just her back, straight but trembling slightly. Something unexplainable made him close his laptop. In that moment, an image of his mother, the woman who waitressed for nearly 2 decades to raise a son on her own in a ruthless city, came rushing back so vividly it hurt. He remembered hearing her cancel a birthday party when he was 8, also because of rent, and how he'd lied to his friends at school, saying he was sick, so no one would ask why there were no balloons, no cake, no party. He never forgot how that felt. And now seeing it all play out again, in the life of a child he'd never even met, made his chest tighten. Travis reached up and touched his wooden wristwatch, a recycled piece he always wore, and a habit he fell into whenever he needed to think clearly. He wasn't the type to make emotional decisions, not after what happened with his old company, a total collapse triggered by one impulsive investment. But this time, what he was weighing wasn't profit or risk. It was what felt right. After the woman left, Travis sat for a while longer. When he saw the shop owner come out to wipe down the counter, he stood and walked over. "I don't mean to intrude," he began, "but the woman just now, what's her name?" The shop owner hesitated, her eyes cautious. Travis didn't blame her. A strange man asking about a female customer, it wasn't something most people would take lightly. "I was here when she talked about the cake," he said. "I don't know her. It's just, I've been in that situation, and I can't sit back and do nothing." His voice was low, calm, not pushy. The shop owner watched him for a few seconds, then seemed to soften. "Her name's Meredith. She lives nearby. I'm not exactly sure, but she mentioned working at some kind of veterinary clinic." Travis gave a slight nod. He didn't ask anything more. He knew exactly where the line was between caring and crossing a boundary, and he had no intention of stepping over it. "She has a daughter, right?" he asked, just to confirm. "Yeah, Lily. Sweet kid. That birthday party, she's been looking forward to it for weeks." Travis thanked her and stepped out of the shop, his mind spinning with half-formed thoughts. It wasn't until he got back into his car that he realized he was searching for something. Out of instinct. Not to be a hero. Not to feel like a good person. Just because he didn't want history to repeat itself. He didn't want another kid to fake being fine just because their mom couldn't afford a cake. He pulled out his phone and called his assistant. No email, no digital trail, nothing that would tie his name to it. "You still in touch with that community events group? The ones who ran the EV showcase at the West Side Playground?" "Yeah, of course." "Why?" "Reach out to them. I need them to put together an outdoor birthday party. Small but special." "For who?" "Doesn't matter. I'll cover the costs. Have them find a park with a water play area near the South Side neighborhood, sometime in the next 3 days. Travis ended the call before more questions could come. He stared out the car window. The rain hadn't let up. But inside, something had just clicked into place. Not out of pity. Not because of some unresolved debt to the past, but because one kid deserved a day the world couldn't ruin. And one mother deserved to know she didn't always have to fight alone. Travis didn't waste time turning the idea into action. He wasn't the type to hesitate once he'd made up his mind, especially when it came to something completely within reach. Right after the call to the events team, he got in touch with the charity he'd founded, the one that quietly supported programs for underprivileged kids, single moms, and families in crisis. But this time, he had a specific request. Keep everything low-key. No name tags, no credit, just a birthday party, on the right day, in the right place, enough to make sure one little girl wouldn't be let down. To pull off the surprise without tipping off Meredith, Travis needed someone on the inside. After a few quiet inquiries through the bakery owner and a former employee who used to live in that neighborhood, he got a name. Edith, a downstairs neighbor, around 70, living alone since her husband passed a few years ago. Everyone in the complex described her the same way: warm, direct, and fiercely fond of Meredith and her daughter. Wednesday afternoon, Travis knocked on Edith's apartment door himself. She opened it with a wary look that came naturally to someone elderly and living alone. Travis introduced himself simply. No full name, no credentials, no bravado. Just a man who'd witnessed something at a bakery and wanted to do a small thing to help make Lily's birthday whole. Edith crossed her arms, eyes fixed on him. "You a friend of theirs?" "No, ma'am. I've never met them before." "Then why do you care?" Travis paused, then answered quietly, "Because I was once the kid who celebrated his birthday with a sandwich, and I never forgot what that felt like." That made Edith pause. She studied the man in front of her, searching for the real reason behind all this, but there was nothing fake in his eyes. After a few moments, she gave a small nod. "I'm not promising anything big, but if you're serious, I'll help." Travis gave a soft smile and extended his hand, a silent promise sealed without words. On the morning of Lily's birthday, Meredith woke up earlier than usual. She had made herself a quiet vow. Even without a party, she would still make pancakes, Lily's favorite. with a chocolate syrup number 8 drawn across the top. She carefully flipped each one, doing her best to ignore the hollow ache in her chest. Lily shuffled out of her room, hair messy, wearing galaxy print pajamas. She sat at the table, looked at the plate her mom set down, and smiled. "I think today's the best day," she said, "because I get to eat your pancakes." Meredith paused for a second, then forced a smile to match. "You remember I promised a party at the park?" "It's okay, Mom. I like anything you do." The answer made Meredith turn away, pretending to grab more napkins. She didn't know whether to feel proud or heartbroken that her daughter was so deeply understanding. As the two were cleaning up, the doorbell rang. It was Edith, holding a paper bag and wearing a sly grin. "Meredith, can you give me a hand with something? Got a few boxes of books I'm donating to the library, but they're too heavy for me to carry. If little Lily could help sort them too, that'd be perfect." Meredith glanced at her daughter, then at the clock. "Sure, we can help. Just let me grab Lily's jacket." On the way out of the apartment complex, Edith drove with an oddly relaxed pace. Lily sat in the back seat, occasionally asking, "Where are we taking the books?" But Edith would only say, "You'll see when we get there." When the car turned onto the road leading into Westside Park, the one with the water play area Lily had always talked about, Meredith started to feel something was off. She was about to speak when Edith called out, "Can you grab this bag for me, dear?" Then she glanced at Meredith and said quietly, "Just follow Lily. I'll take care of the rest." Lily opened the car door and froze. She looked up at the scene in front of her, eyes wide and unblinking. The park was covered in balloons, birthday banners stretched across the walkway, and pink and blue ribbons fluttered in the breeze. Under a shaded pavilion stood a long table draped in soft lavender cloth, loaded with cupcakes, snacks, and rainbow-printed paper cups. In the corner of the play area sat a two-tiered birthday cake, the exact one Lily had drawn in her little notebook. Lily raised her hand to her mouth, her eyes starting to fill with tears. "What's happening, Mom?" Meredith couldn't speak. She didn't know what this was or how it came to be. All she knew was that her heart was pounding, like she'd just stepped into a dream too big to ever believe in. Edith placed a gentle hand on her back and whispered, "Sometimes miracles don't need magic wands. Just someone willing to do the right thing." The sound of children's laughter echoed through the park, washing away the last of the heaviness lingering in Meredith's chest. Lily was playing by the splash pad with a few classmates, her hair soaking wet and wild, her face lit up. She laughed out loud, really laughed. No hesitation, no forced cheer like she'd carried for the past few months. Meredith stood quietly in the shade near a row of benches, her eyes never leaving her daughter. A staff member in a t-shirt with some organization's logo handed her a bottle of water and offered her a cupcake. Meredith nodded her thanks, still trying to make sense of it all. She had no idea who was behind any of this, but she knew one thing for sure. This party hadn't just been thrown together. It was too intentional, too carefully done. This wasn't just balloons and cake. Every detail, the color of the tablecloths, the snacks, even a printed card featuring the doodle of Lily's favorite dog, carried the marks of someone who had been paying close attention. Someone who had seen her daughter. Really seen her. A group of parents who had come with their kids walked over to greet Meredith. They offered their congratulations, complimented the party. "This is amazing. Must have taken a ton of work. Who did you hire? This is seriously professional." Meredith could only manage a tight smile. She didn't know how to respond, so she gently steered the conversation in another direction. She glanced around, hoping to spot Edith, but the older woman had quietly slipped into a small tent at the far end of the park, as if intentionally stepping back to let this moment belong fully to Meredith and Lily. Meredith scanned the area one more time, and this time she noticed a man standing near the outer tree line by the fence. Light gray shirt, khaki pants, sunglasses. He wasn't looking directly at anyone, just standing there, still. She didn't know how long he'd been there, but something about him felt familiar. For just a few seconds, Meredith felt like she'd seen him before. But before she could place the thought, he turned and walked away slowly, disappearing behind the trees. Soft music started playing from the small Bluetooth speaker near the birthday cake table. A cheerful kids' song, the same one Lily often hummed in the bath. Meredith walked over just as the group of kids burst out chanting, "Cake, cake, cake." The birthday cake was placed at the center of the table. 2 tiers of white frosting, decorated with a tiny water slide, a blue fondant pool, and a fondant girl raising her arms in joy. Lily stared at it, mouth open, completely speechless. One of the staff members leaned down and asked gently, "Do you want to blow out the candles now?" Lily nodded fast. As the candles were lit, everyone broke into the birthday song in unison. Meredith stood behind her daughter, both hands resting on Lily's shoulders, her heart overflowing. She had thought this birthday would be a quiet, heavy day filled with quiet disappointment. But now, looking at the joy on Lily's face, there wasn't a trace of regret left anywhere in her. After the cake was cut and party favors handed out, a little girl walked up to Lily and handed her a small card. "Someone asked me to give this to your mom," she said quickly, then ran off. Meredith unfolded the card. Cream-colored paper. Neat, careful handwriting. No name. To the mother carrying the weight of the world and still managing to smile for her child. There are things so small we think we don't deserve them, but they're often the very things we've never allowed ourselves to hope for. Please accept this gift as a thank you for not giving up. No signature. No hint of who had written it. Just a message that made Meredith stand still for a long, quiet moment. That night, after Lily had fallen fast asleep in her soaked princess dress, worn all afternoon through splashing, laughing, and running, Meredith sat alone in the chair by the window, holding the card in her hand. She'd read it more times than she could count, searching for any clue. The handwriting wasn't overly fancy, but every word hit something deep, something quiet and tired inside her that she didn't often let surface. She tried to imagine who could have done all this. It wasn't Edith. She didn't have the means or the reach to organize something this elaborate. It wasn't anyone from the neighborhood. Meredith knew who was struggling, who was just getting by. This went far beyond the kindness of a good neighbor. This had taken resources, people, coordination, and most of all, a heart that had been paying attention. To Lily's favorite colors, to the song she hummed, to the cake she once doodled in her sketchbook. Why? The question looped in her mind. Why would someone who didn't even know them do this? No credit, no thanks, no trace left behind. There was no answer. Just a slow-building wave of gratitude, mixed with something else. A faint, uneasy wonder, not because of the gift itself, but because it all felt too good, too impossibly good, not to question. The next morning, after Lily had left for school, Meredith walked downstairs and knocked on the apartment door below. Edith answered with her usual calm, holding a cup of tea, eyes twinkling with that mischievous spark she always seemed to carry. But when Meredith asked directly, "Do you know who was behind the party yesterday?" the older woman's expression softened. "Not exactly," Edith said after a pause. "I just know someone wanted to do something good for that little girl. They asked me to keep it quiet, and I did." "Was it someone you know?" "Not really. Just someone who said they'd been through something similar." "A man?" Edith looked at her for a long moment, then took a slow sip of tea. "I'm not sure I'm allowed to say much more, but I have a feeling he's not a stranger. Maybe just someone not quite ready to step forward." Meredith didn't press further. She knew better than to push, but the knot in her chest didn't loosen. Back in her apartment, she pulled the card from her coat pocket again and read it once more. The words hadn't changed, but this time, they didn't just feel like a kind message. They felt like a sign that whoever had written them knew her better than she realized. That afternoon at the veterinary clinic, Meredith slipped back into her daily rhythm. A small dog with a broken leg trembled on the exam table. Meredith gently stroked its head, speaking in her calm, steady voice while the lead vet wrapped the injury. Everything had almost settled back into its usual rhythm, until the phone in her pocket buzzed. A number she didn't recognize lit up the screen. Meredith speaking. "Hi Meredith, this is Allison from Pathfinder Veterinary Futures. Do you have a few minutes to chat?" Meredith blinked. She'd never heard of the organization. Sure, I'm on a break." "Great. We're currently rolling out a scholarship program for hands-on veterinary professionals, people with real-world experience who haven't had the chance to pursue formal certification. We reviewed your background and think you'd be an excellent fit, especially based on your fieldwork and how you handle in-the-moment care." Meredith hesitated. "I don't remember submitting anything." "Actually, we received a nomination from a trusted source," Allison replied. "They shared quite a bit about you, your work history, your skills, even some of your personal background." Meredith was quiet. She didn't know whether to feel honored or unsettled. So, what are the scholarship requirements? All costs are fully covered, Allison said smoothly. Full tuition, basic living expenses, and a flexible schedule designed for working parents. We also offer personal mentorship and mental health support if needed. Meredith tightened her grip on the phone, stepping out of the break room to find a quieter space. I won't deny this sounds like an incredible opportunity, but why does it feel like this was built specifically for me? There was the sound of typing on the other end. Then Allison spoke again. We always try to personalize support for each candidate, but if you'd like more information, I can arrange a meeting with your regional coordinator. Meredith paused at the window, staring out at the parking lot. Her old sedan sat tucked in the corner, like the place she'd always occupied in life, quiet, unnoticed, holding the line, doing her best not to derail. I want to meet, she said slowly, either the coordinator or the person who nominated me. Of course, I'll find a time that works for you. Would this weekend be okay? The sooner, the better. Meredith hung up, her thoughts a swirl of emotions. She knew she should be happy. This was the kind of break she hadn't dared to wish for. But the joy came wrapped in questions. Questions she couldn't shake. Who was behind all of this? Why did they care so much about her and Lily? And why wouldn't they show their face? She opened her laptop and clicked into the email address from the digital business card Allison had just sent. In the subject line, she typed, "Request for meeting, scholarship inquiry." Then she sat still for nearly a full minute before writing the first line. She wasn't going to let herself be swept through a maze of anonymous generosity anymore. If this was a real opportunity, she needed to know who opened the door. If this was some kind of miracle, she needed to see the hand holding the wand. 3 days after sending the email, Meredith stood in front of a modest 3-story glass building, nestled quietly in a commercial zone on the city's north side. The sign at the gate read, "Pathfinder Foundation, where purpose finds people." No flash, no show, but to Meredith, this was the place that held the answers to every question that had refused to leave her alone. She was greeted inside by a middle-aged woman in a gray suit, warm smile, eyes kind but not overly curious. After a few quick formalities, Meredith was led down a quiet hallway to a small meeting room. Only one person was waiting inside. And the moment the door opened, she froze. Tall, lean, black hair streaked with gray, eyes that looked like they'd passed over her once before, not long ago, not far away. It took a few seconds before the memory locked into place. The man from the bakery, the one sitting in the corner, watching quietly, gone before she could speak. "Hi, Meredith," he said first, voice low and even. "I'm Travis. We were at the same bakery a few weeks ago." Before she could respond, he extended a hand. A gesture not to assert, but to steady. She shook it, then let go quickly. Every muscle in her body was tight. She didn't sit. She didn't speak. She just stared, waiting for the explanation that had been chasing her in circles for days. "Was it you behind all of it?" The question slipped out before Meredith could stop it. "The birthday, the scholarship, the card," Travis nodded. "I understand if it feels intrusive. I've asked myself the same thing. Whether I had any right to step into someone else's life like that. But that day, when I saw you in the bakery, I couldn't walk away." Meredith stepped inside and sat across from him, her eyes still wary. "I don't get it. We're strangers. Why me?" Travis sat down slowly, fingers interlaced, voice steady. "My mother was a woman like you. Strong, patient, always giving something up. She worked 3 jobs, never asked for help. And because of that, she missed her last chance to become a nurse, even after she got accepted into a training program. She turned it down. She didn't want to owe anyone." He paused, eyes dropping to the floor. "She died just as I was starting college," Travis said quietly. "I've always wondered what would have happened if someone, just one person, had reached out to her. Not as a savior, just as someone who saw her. Not out of pity, just recognition." Meredith stayed silent, her chest tightened. Not with confusion, but with something more personal, more raw. That story, it was nothing like hers, and yet painfully familiar. "And then I saw you in the bakery," Travis continued. "A mother doing the right thing for her child, even if it meant giving up the last sliver of pride she had left. I couldn't walk away from that. I wouldn't." The room fell quiet, but not heavy. The air between them shifted, less guarded, more real. Meredith looked at him more closely now. He wasn't just the quiet man in the distance anymore. He was someone with a past, with reasons, with a kind of honesty that was disarming. "Why didn't you just say something from the start?" she asked. "You could have left a card, a name, Anything. Travis shook his head gently. Because I didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything. I didn't want any of it to turn into a debt. Meredith gave a small nod, still unsure how much of this she could fully believe or trust. But one thing was clear. Travis wasn't chasing credit. He wasn't looking to be anyone's hero. And somehow that only made it harder to understand. Then his voice softened. "There's something else I'd like to ask," he said. "My foundation is launching a new project focused on inspiring single mothers, the ones still stuck between survival and the dreams they haven't let go of. We're looking for real stories. Your story could help them feel less alone." Meredith didn't speak. She couldn't hide the flicker of discomfort that passed across her face. Her story? The one she'd always believed was too ordinary, too quiet, or maybe too painful for anyone else to need to hear? That story? Now he was saying it could help someone? "You don't have to decide right now," Travis added gently. "There's no rush. I just thought, maybe part of you needs something too. Something to remind you that you're not just getting through the days." Meredith lowered her head, fingers tightly interlaced under the table. She didn't say anything more, but something inside her shifted, quietly, unmistakably. Part of her was still guarded, but another part, however small, was starting to believe. Not because Travis had helped her, but because he had seen her, in a way few ever had. She didn't respond right after the meeting, but 2 days later, she sent an email confirming her place in the scholarship program. No long thank you. No big promises, just a simple message. She was ready to try, to trust the opportunity. And maybe even trust a person. The program began the following week. Meredith returned to the classroom after more than a decade away from textbooks and lesson plans. The schedule hit harder than she expected. Every morning, she was up by 5 a.m., made breakfast for Lily, got her daughter ready, and dropped off at school. Then rushed to catch the bus to campus. Afternoons, she squeezed in a short shift at the vet clinic. Evenings were a blur of chores, showers, bedtime routines, and only then, with heavy eyes, did she sit at her desk to study. There were nights Meredith fell asleep with her head on the textbook, pen still in hand. But even in the exhaustion, she felt alive. Not just surviving to pay bills anymore, but moving through a journey with a destination. Sometimes on Tuesdays or Fridays, Travis would stop by. No warning, never for long. He'd bring a takeout box, a few picture books, or a tiny science kit he thought Lily might enjoy. At first, Lily was shy, but it didn't take long before her eyes lit up at the sound of the doorbell. Meredith noticed how Travis always kept just enough distance, far enough not to intrude, close enough to be there if she ever needed him. He never asked about her classes, never pushed for updates. He'd simply ask things like, "Did Lily sleep okay last night?" Or, "Anything fun happen at school today?" Meredith kept a cautious boundary in place. She'd known what it felt like to rely on someone, and what came after when they walked away. She wasn't about to relearn that lesson. And more than anything, she wasn't going to let Lily face that kind of disappointment. Then, one Sunday evening, while all three were peeling apples together for dinner, Lily asked casually, "Uncle Travis, did you ever have kids?" Travis paused for a beat, then gave a soft smile. "No kids," he said, "but I used to have a family." Meredith looked up and caught his eyes for just a second. He didn't look away, but there was something in that glance that told her this wasn't something he usually said out loud. After Lily wandered out to the balcony to water the plants, Meredith moved quietly to stand beside him at the sink. "You had a family?" she asked gently. "Yeah," he said, eyes still on the dish he was drying. "My ex-wife was a professor, smart, kind, but I didn't know how to keep things balanced. Work was everything back then. I thought if I succeeded enough, everything else would fall into place. But I was wrong." Meredith didn't respond, but she heard it, the quiet regret in his voice, unpolished, unperformed, no excuses, no reach for sympathy, just the truth, bare and humble. After that day, though no one said it aloud, the rhythm between the three of them began to shift. There were simple, warm dinners shared without pretense. Weekend nights spent reading aloud to Lily, sometimes taking turns, sometimes all at once in a jumble of laughter. Evenings when Meredith looked up from her notes to find Travis helping Lily fold paper cranes in the corner of the room. She never said it out loud, not even to herself, but something in her had begun to acknowledge his presence. Not just as a friend. Not yet as something more. But somewhere in between. A space without a name, but no longer strange. She felt herself soften, felt the guard in her chest loosen, just a little. And sometimes when she caught Travis watching her as she laughed with Lily, eyes steady, no pressure, she'd wonder, am I stepping into something new? A chapter I never planned for, but maybe one that's slowly writing itself? It was late. Lily was fast asleep. Meredith sat curled in the armchair, blanket draped over her legs, hands wrapped around a mug of ginger tea. Travis was getting ready to leave, slipping on his coat near the door. "You once said you didn't want anyone to miss their chance the way your mom did," she said quietly as he reached for the handle. "What about you? Do you think you're getting a second chance?" Travis paused, his hand still resting on the doorknob. He turned toward her, not smiling, but softer somehow, like his voice had shed its weight. "I don't know if this is a second chance," he said. "Or just the first one I've been clear-headed enough not to waste." Meredith didn't answer. But that night, after she kissed Lily gently on the forehead and settled back at her desk to continue writing her paper on animal behavior, she noticed something. Her hands weren't shaking, and for the first time in what felt like forever, her thoughts drifted past fear. Not to abandonment, but to possibility. That maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to carry everything alone anymore. Winter had begun to settle over the quiet suburban streets. Strings of lights flickered in apartment windows, the scent of gingerbread and cinnamon drifted from the cafe on the corner, and Christmas songs hummed softly from bus radios, as if something warm was approaching, despite the sharp bite of the early season cold. For Meredith, this would be the first Christmas she didn't have to fear the bills. No more counting coins to buy clearance gifts. No more masking fatigue behind a smile just to keep her daughter from seeing the weight she carried. A week before the holiday, Travis handed her a small, handwritten invitation. He did it casually. No build-up, no pressure. "My organization's hosting a little year-end gathering," he said. "Nothing fancy, nothing formal, just a small celebration to thank the people who've inspired us along the way." Meredith read the invitation without asking any questions. But deep down, she could feel it. Something was shifting. Not a surprise exactly. More like a turning point. A natural continuation of everything they'd shared, a quiet step forward. That evening, the community center glowed with holiday warmth. Pine wreaths, red ribbons, and flickering candlelight cast soft reflections across the dark wood-paneled walls. Lily wore a red dress with a white collar, her hair neatly tied to one side by Meredith's careful hand. She clutched a folded piece of paper, the drawing she'd been working on all week. Her secret gift. She hadn't let anyone see it, not even her mom. The guest list was small, a handful of foundation members, some volunteers, and a few recipients from programs throughout the year. The atmosphere was easy, close, no formality, no spotlight. Meredith sat beside Lily near the back row of chairs, comfortable, but with a quiet, unexplainable anticipation tugging just beneath her calm. Travis stepped up onto the small stage, just a microphone and a simple backdrop with the foundation's name printed across it. He wore a gray sweater and dark jeans, nothing about him signaling the head of a major charitable fund. But the moment he spoke, the room fell quiet. "This year," he began, voice steady but unassuming, "we launched 4 new programs: scholarships for single parents, emergency medical funding, flexible job training, and a mentorship network for those returning to school." He paused, letting the words settle. His gaze drifted toward the back row and held there. But it all started with something small. Very small. A spring morning, a bakery near a gas station, and I watched a mother cancel her daughter's birthday cake. The room felt frozen in place. Meredith gripped her hands tightly, instinctively leaning toward Lily, a subtle gesture of comfort, even if her daughter didn't fully understand what was being said. "That mother didn't cry," Travis continued. "She apologized, said she'd still pay the deposit, and then she walked out, head held high, as if determined not to let anyone see the moment she was breaking." He paused again. "But I saw it, not weakness, but a kind of strength that stops your breath." This time, his eyes softened. He wasn't speaking to the crowd anymore. She didn't know that her silence, that quiet resilience, was what made me stop. Me, someone who spent years obsessed with forecasts, planning, and spreadsheets, I had to ask myself, what am I doing with all these resources if I can't change that kind of moment? Meredith couldn't hold back her tears, but she didn't look away. She didn't hide. She let them fall, because this wasn't a moment to shrink from. Not anymore. Travis closed his speech with a simple thank you and a warm wish for the year ahead. As he stepped down from the stage, Lily ran up to him, clutching the folded paper she'd kept close all evening. I drew this for you, she said quietly. Because you're my mom's hero. Travis looked surprised as he carefully unfolded the drawing. 3 figures stood beneath a sky full of stars, a woman, a little girl, and a man holding a flashlight. Beneath the picture, in careful, slightly uneven handwriting, Lily had written, "Your mom's hero." Travis knelt down and gently wrapped his arms around her. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. No one in the room needed an explanation. Later, as the evening wound down, Meredith was invited into a quiet room off to the side. A representative from the foundation handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was an official letter, an invitation to join the organization's advisory board. No pressure, no long-term obligation, just an open door. A chance to lend her voice so that others could receive the right opportunity at the right moment, just like she once did. As Meredith stepped out of the room, she spotted Travis by the tea table, a cup of hot cocoa in his hand. They looked at each other. Neither spoke first. Then he set the cup down and walked toward her. "Congratulations," he said. "Thank you," she replied, soft but steady. There was no embrace, no kiss, no lingering romantic gaze, just a firm, warm handshake, the kind shared by 2 people who had walked through exhaustion, through quiet battles, through doubt and past wounds, and somehow arrived here. Not as saviors, not as stories, but as companions. And there, amid the sound of bells and the scent of cinnamon, Meredith understood. This wasn't the ending. It was a beginning, a real one. Sometimes we don't need someone to come save our whole life. We just need someone steady enough to stand beside us, quiet enough to listen, patient enough to see us, exactly when the world turns away. Meredith never asked for help. Travis never made promises. But from the smallest moments, a lasting connection had begun to take root. Maybe what matters most isn't who shows up in your life, but who stays, when all you have left to hold on to is yourself. Have you ever stood at a crossroads like Meredith did? Have you ever met someone who made you start to believe again? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what this story meant to you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss the next story. Real moments, real emotions, straight from life. Thanks for being here with us today. We'll see you on the next journey.